How do we set up an understanding for the errors of extrema?
The horizontal line, so people know, is what we call the plane of perception. And the idea is that, say I put an envelope around the body, and anything that flows through the envelope towards the self, towards the body, is sensory input. And anything that flows from the inside, from you, through the boundary into the world is expression. And then for simplicity's sake, we don't really care how much volume there is inside versus how much volume there is outside. If we're really just generalizing, we're going to say, well, let's just treat it as if the volumes were the same. So in that sense, I have now a plane that distinguishes things behind it, things that are behind the plane, which is on my side, and things that are away from me or beyond the plane, which would effectively be the outside, right? So essentially, there's the subjective on one side of the plane, and there's the objective on the other side of the plane. So that's that horizontal line. We're looking as if we're looking down from the top, and the the arrow that's going from the bottom of the screen towards the top of the screen, the arrow that's pointing up, is a motion from the subjective towards the objective. So we're going to call that expression. And the arrow that's going down on the left is essentially something that's moving from the objective towards the subjective. It could be data or sense or whatever. And in that particular sense, we're perceiving because it's crossing the plane of perception. However, we, you know, organize that information internally, or however the world takes our expressions and makes things changes in the world. We'll talk about those in a minute. But what the world does is the line that's going to the left, that's at the top, and what you do as a being, as a subjective, is the line that's at the bottom, going from the left to the right. So those are the elements of the diagram. Does that make sense for people? I think the thing, as far as this diagram is concerned, there would be a couple of improvements. Um, One is just for uh, just as a thing that might make it easier to work with people. Um, Make the arrows go the opposite direction. In other words, just like make the rotation go the other way, because the thing is rotating counterclockwise. And in a lot of places where I'm talking about axiom 2, I'm drawing a clockwise circle. So it would just be visually easier for people if I kept the clockwise orientation. So all I would end up doing is flipping the expression onto the left and the perception onto the right. And again, this is a stylistic thing that just happens to be consistent with other diagrams. Um, and then, of course, you might want to label the plane of perception as that explicitly, so that people know that that's what it is. Because right now, it looks like that line is perception and expression, whereas really you're talking about the arrows going across the line as perception and expression. Does all that make sense?
How do the subjective and the objective apply to interaction and universe?
Well, we could treat the what the world is doing, the objective, as if it was a causal process, or we could treat it as interacting existing things. And we could treat the subjective as if it was a choice-based process, or if it was some sort of um, choice and creation interaction sort of thing. Now, at this particular point, I don't know that we need to just. I don't know that it makes sense for us to try to go down to that level of detail. Um, but other than to say there's stuff out there and there's stuff in here, and the stuff out there is in some sort of process, the stuff in here is in some sort of process, and the thing of going across from in here to out there is a process, and the thing of going from out there to in here is a process. So we have four kinds of process, and so in effect we can start to um, really look at what happens with these four processes working together. What happens if one of them is essentially said to be not a process, so nothing? And that way, there, if we're just thinking in terms of processes or in terms of flows, then we would be, just able to work with one concept rather than trying to imagine it in terms of existences or interactions or creations or choices and things like that. So in that sense, the errors of extrema are observations we make about the dynamics of how we position process.